and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for joining the professor. First of all, let me thank all of you. This is going to be a great informative event. For many of you have questions, and our job is not to malign anybody's name. And I want to say very clearly that as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Alexandre is innocent until proven guilty. So we're not going to talk about necessarily his case in terms of his innocence guilt. Ms. Ballantyne is the moderator tonight. She's going to go over the rule very quickly. We have decided to mute your microphone, but if you have questions or statement, everyone who wants to speak would have an opportunity to do so. We will unmute your microphone and everyone would have at least 2 minutes. This is a 90-minute event, so I'm not going to lecture anyone. We're simply going to talk and allow questions. My presentation is definitely going to be about 3 minutes. I'm just going to tell you what the government case is, what they're saying.
Everybody for joining this evening. We have about 65 people on the call right now. So when it becomes time for you to speak, just raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you and unmute your microphone, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask your question or make a statement. As was mentioned, this is not a time to belittle anybody. It's really to ask questions and have conversation. So with that, I will pass this over to the professor and we shall go.
Thank you so very much, Madam Moderator. Thank you for all of you who are joining. This is an opportunity for us in the Haitian community to learn how to do things better. This is not an opportunity to criticize. Everyone's made mistakes in the past. I know I have made my share of mistakes, but I have learned from them. And I think that this has nothing, absolutely nothing to do personally with Eddy Alexandre. In fact, if anything, I think Eddy Alexandre has done something that a lot of people in the community who have been in the community for decades couldn't possibly do. If he had made some mistake, I'm sure that they were intentional. No one wants to make mistake intentionally. But what we can do is learn from what happened, and as we move forward, we do better. Now, let me just quickly go over the case and where we are. I have conducted my own investigation. MNEFX was simply a corporation held by its CEO, Eddy Alexandre. Certainly, based on my investigation, MNEFX was basically having people invest. So anyway, as I was saying, MNEFX was a company. It wasn't, let's say, an investment company, so to speak. It was just a company that was receiving money from investors and then turn around to invest the money. But it appears, based on my investigation, that none of the investment were made under a particular person's name. In other words, if I invested money in MNEFX, that money would not be invested under my name or your name. So in other words, the money was either invested under MNEFX name or Eddy Alexandre name, which has its own legal problem on the side. Now, this is what the government is saying, okay? And please listen to what I'm telling you. This is not what I said. This is what the government is saying. The government said that the money that Eddy Alexandre was paying all of you, I presume that most of you, that all of you were investors. The money that he was paying people every Friday, that money was not money that he earned from investment. What does that mean? That means that the government is saying, not that it's true, but the government is saying that the money that he was paying people was money from other people who came later in the deal. It wasn't money that he earned from investment. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the government is saying the only investment they were able to find was a $9 million that Eddy Alexandre invested, which $9 million, according to the government, was invested under Eddy Alexandre's name, not under a particular person's name, not under a MNEFX name. It was under Eddy Alexandre's name. Of that $9 million that the government claimed that they found that Eddy Alexandre invested, he lost $6 million of it. And the government is saying that Eddy Alexandre never told the investors a couple of things. One, he never told them that the money was invested under his name as opposed to the investors. Two, that he lost $6 million. He never told them. That's what the government said. I'm not saying that it's true. I'm only repeating what the government said. This may not be true. I don't know, but I'm telling you what the government said. So the other thing the government is saying, which is there was a video that Eddy Alexandre made after he got the office. In that video, he was talking to a group of people, presumably investors. In that video, he said that FX had raised $100 million. The government has a copy of that video in their file, and Eddy Alexandre was going over the investment. So those are the issues. Whether or not those were mistakes made by Eddy, or maybe Eddy didn't know what he was doing, or FX has grown too fast, they've raised too much money, I don't know. But this is what the government is saying. Okay, last thing the government is saying that Eddy Alexandre lied to the investors, okay? And the lie, this is the lie. The lie is that he never told them that the money were not invested the way he said he would invest it. He never told them that he lost $6 million. That's what the government is saying. Is that true or not? I don't know. Eddy Alexandre would have an opportunity to go to court and then present its own evidence to counteract what the government is saying. Let me give you an example. If the government said that the money Eddy Alexandre was paying, for example, my uncle invested $10,000, his friend invested $7,500. If Eddy Alexandre could prove that the money he was paying my uncle, he was paying my friend's uncle, were money he actually earned from an investment return, then Eddy Alexandre is good to go. And there is no problem with regard to that, because if he could prove that, then the entire case falls apart. Okay, but he has to prove that whatever money he paid to everyone who were getting it, that money came from a certain investment, whether it was investment overseas, whether it was cryptocurrency. If he could prove that, then we are good to go. Now, let's assume that Eddy Alexandre could prove that, and he ended up winning the case, he's found not guilty. I have said before, and I'm telling you guys again, that FX, as it is right now, is done. The government has taken it over. So this is where the case is in terms of the criminal case. Put that on the side. Now let's talk about the case with the Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Trade Commission is a federal agency that deals with trades, people buying stock and commodities. Now, normally, when you have a company that invests money, normally, not at all situations, they need to register with the FTC, okay? FX wasn't registered with the FTC. Maybe FX didn't have to register. But whenever you have unaccredited investors involved with someone, the FTC would always come and look to see what's going on. So the FTC filed a lawsuit to take over FX, which they already have done by court order. Now, the receiver that they have hired, that they have retained, the FTC had retained the receiver and get the judge to approve the receiver. That guy, his job only is to collect as much money from as many places as possible. And if the money is held by Eddy Alexandre under his name, there was some account that has money in it that was under his name, they're gonna take that. They're taking over the account of FX. There was about 12 different accounts, last time I counted, that the receiver taking over. That money is now sitting in a trust account with the federal court in Manhattan. So what they're going to do is, the receiver's job is to make sure they find out who all the investors are. Everybody who invested, they're gonna have to find out who the investors are. But keep in mind that when the receiver is getting paid, he's a lawyer who has an office in Manhattan, he's being paid for that, okay? He's not doing this for free. The investor, the receiver also filed a letter with the court asking the court to allow him to hire, for example, accountant or forensic accountant, certain investigators. These people are going to be paid from the money of the investors. So when it all said and done, when this case is over, let's say that the case is over next July, then the receiver will then file a report with the court, explaining to the court, this is how much money we were able to collect. This is how much we spent. In other words, his fee, the investigator's fee, the forensic accounting fees, the secretary, all the fees, they're going to add up. And then the court is going to authorize the receiver to take his payment out of that money. The rest of that money is then going to be distributed to the investors. Now, there are people I know, friends of mine that I know, but they had been getting their 5% every Friday for the last 4 months. So that's a lot of money. What the receiver is going to do, they're going to look at all the people who collected money, and they're going to add all this thing together, and they're going to deduct it from the original investment. But please keep in mind that I have never seen a case where the investor get exactly what it is that they invested. So in other words, if I invested $100,000, I'll be lucky if I get $60,000 back. But it all depends on how much money that the government, the receiver, was able to get back. Now, there is something that I want all of you to hear. There is a crypto account overseas, and Eddy Alexandre had said this himself, but I have spoken to people who are very, very close to Eddy Alexandre, who confirmed that there is a cryptocurrency account overseas that may have $50 million on it. And let me say again that this statement was corroborated by Eddy Alexandre's own statement when he actually had a meeting at his office where he said he's not using American bank, he's using European banks in a foreign country so that he can make payment. So if you take what Eddy Alexandre said and you take what people very, very close to him are saying, it seems like there is this crypto account. Now, the government know about the crypto account, but they cannot get access to it. In fact, if you remember when Eddy Alexandre was first arrested, one of the conditions of his bail was that he had to tell the government where the cryptocurrency account was. And I'm very happy he didn't do that, because that would have been giving the government evidence against himself, which is a violation of the Fifth Amendment to incriminate yourself. So Eddy Alexandre was very smart for not telling me. Now, he's never going to have to tell them. But we have to keep in mind that a number of things can happen. If the case is over, Eddy Alexandre win, we're all going to be celebrating, we're all going to be happy. If the case is over, Eddy Alexandre loses, then the question becomes what happened to that money, that crypto account money overseas that the federal government doesn't have access to? Will Eddy then give that money back to the investors? Because one thing I want people to keep in mind, the investment that I've heard of, all of it were either made under Eddy Alexandre's name or under MNEFX's name, which means that, God forbid, Eddy Alexandre died before he got arrested, the investors would have a very, very hard time trying to get the money back, because the money was not necessarily invested under that particular investor's name. For example, if you have a bank account, you have $1 million on it, you die, your wife, your kids would be able to go to court, get a piece of paper, go to court, go to the bank and get the money back. But if you give me $1 million to invest for you, and that money is in my personal account and your name is nowhere in it, and I die, my family, my wife, my kid just got enough to make $1 million. So those are all the different things that we are uncovering. And I want the community to get the knowledge, the requisite knowledge, so that next time you guys doing an investment, you would ask the right questions. And I think that a lot of us, we trust each other, which is a good thing. But I like what Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. I always ask the hard questions. How is this going to work out? Who's going to be in charge of it? Am I going to have access to my account? What I'm going to do. So this is my presentation, guys. I'm going to stop here. We're going to allow people to make a statement, to ask questions. So please feel free to ask questions. If you want to turn up your video, we would like for you to turn up the video. So I'm going to stop there and take questions. Thank you so much. Go ahead. First question.
I have a question with two parts, if you don't mind. The first part, you mentioned that your family is also you have family who invested in this. We would like to know, how did they go through the experience of upon learning that Eddy Alexandre was arrested? How was that experience like? That's the part one. And then when you're done, I'll ask the second part of the same question.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll answer it. I have my uncle that I grew up with, like my brother. He did invest $10,000. When Eddy Alexandre was arrested, he called me and he said, "Did you hear the news?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I've never had any problem with Eddy Alexandre. I got my money as he promised. I'm not sure what's going on." And I told him, "Listen, we can't really jump to conclusion." He wasn't upset. I think he was more disappointed that Eddy Alexandre was arrested. He wasn't blaming Eddy Alexandre. He didn't think Eddy Alexandre did anything wrong. He just said that, he wants to wait to see what happens. So he's waiting to see what happened. And of course, his family. So I talk to him all the time and I try to explain the case to him so he understands better. But I think at the end of the day, no matter which way this happened, I think that based on what I can tell you as a former prosecutor, I personally don't think Eddy Alexandre had any intention to do anything wrong. I think he made some terrible mistake. But sometimes we all make mistakes, and and when we make those mistakes, then some of them tend to be in violation of the law. But I don't think personally this is a guy that went out and said, "Hey, let me just do this fraud." I don't believe that. Personally, I don't believe that. That's the answer to the first question. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I have an understanding that some people might want to ask question in Creole. Before I ask my next question in English, will they be allowed to?
Absolutely,
okay, now,
absolutely.
Perfect. Now, the second question I have is part of the same experiencing situations. We've heard, we've seen some things about your experience as well. Can you share with us how did you take it? How did you go through that experience when you learned that they started an investigation against your New York law license in 2009? How did you go through that experience?
Well, there are two things. First, I was a practicing attorney in New York. And if you look at my background, I spent 7 years suing police department in New York, Long Island, Florida for racial profiling. That was what I was, a civil rights attorney. And I had filed a lawsuit against the mayor of New York at the time, who wanted the third term. This was in the newspaper. I had filed a lawsuit against the FBI, the Secret Service. I wasn't afraid of suing the big guys. But when you sue the big guys, you also have to know that they're going to come after you. So they did come after me. And in my case, personally, it was kind of interesting because I am the only person in the entire United States who have been convicted of wire fraud, bank fraud, but never had to pay a penny of restitution. That doesn't happen. You get convicted, you got to pay money back. And the reason was simply that the same guy that I sued, Brian Parr, the head of the Secret Service in New York, was the same guy who arrested me. But the government knew it was retaliation. They wouldn't let me argue that in front of the jury. So when I got convicted, and the judge asked the government, "Hey, did Mr. Owen make any money?" The government said no. So they kind of figured out, well, this was a case of retaliation. How did I feel about it? Of course, it was a shock because people were talking to me. I have friends of mine who said, if I were you, I wouldn't sue the Secret Service, I wouldn't sue the FBI. But I had the mistaken belief that this is a country of law. I don't care if you're the president of the United States, you broke the law, you have to respond to it. But I have learned the hard way that the FBI, the Secret Service, these people operate on the different rules. They do their own thing. It's about giving information to the community. Let's not make this about me. Let me be very
clear. Have to make it about you because it's about you. You are the one presenting.
Okay.
We want to know you. We want to know if you qualify.
Okay. Let me finish. I have never, ever hide what happened. I have made it as public. Can I finish? Let me finish. I had made it as public as possible. Anybody who watched Teleimage or other news, they'll know I've talked about this all the time. You know why I talk about it? Because I know what happened. I know it's not true. They wanted to get me out of the practice because I was a thorn on their side. And I'm not the first person that happened to. I'm not the first lawyer. I could be the longest lawyer that happened to. So I've defended it. I'm speaking about it. So I don't want to take too much time. Everybody has 2 minutes. I'm sure there are other people that have other questions. So I thank you for your questions. And we're going to move to the next question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, you also mute Roosevelt for unmute pour parler.
Oui, oui. Bonsoir, frère. Comment est-ce?
Moi là, mon frère, vous-même.
Moi, très bien, moi, très bien. Bon, en tout cas, moi, merci quand même pour le travail, information pour la communauté. Question que je vous demande, est-ce que jusqu'à présent, nous connaissons, ou bien est-ce que le receveur a dit combien de qui était investi totalement et combien de lui joignent en façon qu'on est là, qui peut être capable de prouver réellement que c'est dans l'intérêt communautaire. Parce qu'on suppose que tu as un total 80 millions de dollars que tu as investi et puis tu as 100 millions. Ça veut dire pas de gain perte, gain profit. Gain moyen pour tout le monde net, tu as supposé jouer combien tu as investi et reste qui était pour là, après, si tu as fait une sortie là-dedans, pour redistribuer encore par le monde. Est-ce que vous avez une clarification sur ce step ça?
Oui, oui. Gouvernement dit que so far, il a gagné 51 millions de dollars qui ont joué déjà. C'est-à-dire que ont joué, comme on dit avant, 12 à 40 et Citibank, il y a un compte tout qui était sur l'autre 40 et privé qui sorti dans le compte là qui ont joué. So, il y a 51 millions. 51 millions qui ont joué maintenant, il a dit que c'est 59 millions qui ont même, il a dit que il connaît qui Emily FX avec Eddy Alexandre.
Nenen is going to be speaking on something.
Yeah, let me finish. OK. Après, qui t'aime finir pour une question et puis ça va. Est-ce que fini? So, 51 millions qui ont joué maintenant, changer que il dit tout, tu as 9 millions qui t'es investi. 9 millions et 6 millions qui perdus. So, si il y a 59 millions, nous connaissons au moins 53 millions parce que y a 6 millions déjà qui étaient perdus dans l'investissement. Comme ça, c'est ça qui est mais c'est ça qui est rejoint. Mais comme je t'ai dit avant, il semblait que peut-être Eddy Alexandre a 40 dans l'autre pays en Europe qu'il a fait tuer de crypto. Soit 40, ça doit être problème, mais le gouvernement compte tout comme ça. So, si le gouvernement maintenant, c'est lui qui va distribuer par tout le monde. Now, si tu as un investissement fait, il y a un profit. Le gouvernement a un problème. Parce que changer que le gouvernement dit pas d'investissement fait. So, si pas d'investissement fait, pas de profit. So, si on profit, si le gouvernement joue 60 millions, 80 millions, ça veut dire qu'il y a un profit, ça veut dire qu'Alexandre a fait un bagage qui doit, et bien, mon yo arrêté avec méchanceté. Mais sauf fois, je n'ai aucune évidence qui dit que tu as gagné un investissement qui vient retourner en profit. Vous comprenez?
OK.
Yeah.
Bon, en tout cas, je ne sais pas parce que le document que je vais regarder dans le même papier que le receveur a envoyé, côté que la description un total de 62 700 000 dollars, qui déjà en plus que 59 millions de dollars, il a soi-disant cherché.
Bon.
Et puis, on peut tout dans le même rapport ça, et il a noté qu'on a fait 46 cailles en total, que vous joignez tout, que vous avez fait des matchs pour recouvrir comme déposit. So, définitivement, moi, alors, jusqu'à présent, moi, je crois que le gouvernement là pour l'aider nous, mais dans le même moment, je me sens plus confortable si vous avez fait, on connaît, OK, mais combien de qui investi en total? Ça a parce que il y a 62 millions même. Ça veut dire la possible combien de toute quantité de gens ont déposé à partir de ça là, sous ça rejoindre avec ça perdu. Donc n'a pas exactement côté nous garde.
Bon, au compte ça passe tout et ton bagage qui est important parce que auparavant, mais ça me détendait. Moi détendais que investisseur pour aller à son avocat qui pourrait présenter intérêt pas. Parce que je n'ai pas aucun papier fil dans le pas connais si investisseur était fait. Moi-même, moi, j'ai famille PAM qui est investisseur. Je suis droit faire monsieur, jeune avocat, à l'encore dit qu'il a représenté investisseur. Mais monsieur, ça a un petit investisseur qui a investi 10 000 dollars. Je connais que plus gros investisseur qui a investi 100 000, qui a investi 50 000. Moi, je pense que tout investisseur, ça va supposé mettre tête nous ensemble pour nous chercher un avocat. Pour l'avocat lui-même parler dans le cas tout, parce que en pile fois tout, le receveur qu'on gaspille l'argent, on va dépenser, bah, tu vas bien dépenser. So, il n'est pas nécessairement que le gouvernement a un avantage, parce que changer comme dit nous que il a arrêté Eddy Alexandre avant même qu'il y ait une investigation. So, jusqu'à présent, l'investigation n'est pas finie. C'est-à-dire que nous ne sommes pas capables de faire une conclusion. Même parler de ça que le gouvernement a dit, même pas dire que vous, je ne sais pas connaître. Eddy Alexandre beaucoup parler à personne et d'accord pour tu vas parler parce que monsieur non pas parler. Mais soit dit à mon frère Roosevelt et c'est ça qui est lié. Moi-même si je suis pas moi, si quelqu'un mon capitaine de là qui investit en pile cob, m'a dit que li bon pour ta parler avec un avocat qui pour ta représenter le groupe là parce que 62 000 personnes, on a besoin au moins 25 personnes qui pour signer qui dit oui d'accord pour embaucher avocat ça pour représenter intérêt. Comme ça, avocat ça travaille c'est pour les assurer que tout le monde qui investit a une information exactement ça qui a passé comme un de jouer. Parce que parfois, le gouvernement a toute vérité. Parfois, il y a un bagage et puis après, il change. Ça passe tout le temps. So, c'est moi-même, si je me conseil, moi, c'est de dire investisseur, chercher avocat. Vous comprenez? OK. Vous avez une question?
Dernière question. Ou te go éviter semaine passée, jeune garçon, Manhattan, sous te ka ba information li, m'dare jeune contact monsieur.
Bon, je peux monsieur souligner là, oui, je peux monsieur souligner Michael, je peux monsieur là.
Yeah.
Et monsieur qui a parlé, monsieur là, sous des questions pour monsieur, nous prendre ça après, même pour monsieur souligner. OK?
Eh bien, OK. Merci.
OK, vous avez l'autre question.
Charlene, and we have a question if you can do English as well.
OK. Charlene, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having the Zoom for everyone to ask questions. My question is, if somebody who lives abroad, who is not in a foreign country, who is not a U.S. citizen or a U.S. resident, how is the receiver will be able to contact those people once the judge allow them to start distributed the funds? How will they reach out to those members for them to receive their fund?
Okay, there are two things I want to. This is very important. I don't know how people were able to invest. I didn't know if you had to fill out an application with your name, address, telephone number, and then wire the money to EminiFX. So EminiFX has some kind of document. What I know is that the government has taken over all the computers, all the documents. So presumably they have everybody's name and number, whether you live in Haiti or in Nigeria, anywhere overseas, they'll be able to contact you. Either they'll contact you by email or they will call you. But if you live overseas, okay, and I said this to people before, it is not a bad thing to contact the receiver. You're not going to discuss the case. You're just going to say, look, I'm one of the investors. Here's my name, here's my number, here's my email address. That's it. You don't have to say how much you invested. You don't have to give them that information. But at least you know that they have you on the list. Because I can almost guarantee you that there are people who may not get their money back because their name is nowhere. There's no way for the government to confirm that these people are investors. Now, Eddy Alexandre could be very helpful. He could put together a list of all the investors, because I'm sure he does, and then give that to the receiver. But here's what happened. Remember what I said before. If all the investors hired the same lawyer, then that lawyer could work together with Eddy to get the list of all the people and be able to talk to the receiver to make sure that everybody's name is there. So when they're distributing the money, you can get your money as well. Okay? Et je connais des gens qui dit pour moi, pour me parler créole, pour me parler anglais. Question Roosevelt, j'ai été posée, c'est combien how much money did the receiver have collected, and if they had found more than they claim was invested, would they get that money back? And the question was yes. So far, I told them, as far as I know from the case file, there's $51 million that they received, and they're looking for more money. But I did also say that it is my belief that there's another account overseas, a crypto account that Eddy had. He did mention that crypto account, supposedly, I'm not sure I was told, could have as much as $50 million on it. The government doesn't have access to it. They wanted Eddy to give them access. Eddy said no, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that money is not really part of the $51 million. So there could be a pot of money somewhere that the government may not have access to. So when this case is over, whatever the receiver have, which is so far 51 million, they're going to distribute that to everybody else. If there's any other money somewhere else, they don't have access to it, then they don't have access to it. So it is very important that the investors come together and hire their own lawyer. Okay, you guys have to do that because we're talking about $59 million. All of you come together, find a lawyer, let that lawyer represent your interests because the FTC is going to spend that money. They're going to hire people, and I don't know if you know how this is done. Normally, when the FTC file lawsuit, they usually hire their friends, people they work with, because everybody's got their hands out, making money out of the investors' money. So don't think that this is something, somehow the government is looking for your best interest. The government is looking to enforce the law. That doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be in your best interest. So if I was an investor, because I don't have standing, in other words, what does that mean in the law? It means that I haven't invested any money, I don't have any legal right. If I had a legal right, by now I would have a lawyer who would be the person representing the interests of the group. So there are some people here that I know, I've seen some names. All of you could have a meeting on Zoom, 25, 30 of you, and then hire a lawyer.
We have Marie and Leo.
Marie, you are next.
Des questions. Première question, c'est, OK, est-ce que vous-même vous sorti dans camp Eddy? Est-ce que vous travaillez avec Eddy, avec groupe, et ou fait partie des leadership group des MNEFX? Ça, c'est la première question, moi.
Speak English.
Okay. The question is whether or not I'm part of MNEFX or part of the leadership. Réponse non. Moi pas fait partie de MNEFX. Pour te dire la vérité, depuis MNEFX fait commencer, moi j'ai moun bons amis, famille qui t'ai investi dans groupe qui était avant qui était 89 moun là. Moi-même personnellement, m'pas investi parce que j'ai des questions qui pas claires pour moi. Mais j'ai amis, j'ai famille, j'ai moun qui investi. So moi j'ai intérêt dans ça qui passe là, au moins c'est pas moi personnellement, mais famille. Et l'autre I'm going to tell you in English. L'autre bagage encore, c'est que ça qui passe, il y a une opportunité pour nous apprendre pour l'autre fois qu'on va faire pour ne pas faire même faute. As I was saying in Creole that my interest in this is that I have been. The question was whether I'm part of MNEFX. The answer is no. Correct. I'm not part of the MNEFX, but I knew of MNEFX before MNEFX became MNEFX, because before there were 89 people who was an investment club. The investment club grew to MNEFX. But I've been following the company since it started in September. I've been following it. I have friends of mine, family members who invested. They've asked me for my advice. I looked at the website. I talked to a lot of people. I analyzed what was going on. I've decided that because I didn't understand clearly what was going on, not that they were doing something wrong, I didn't understand. I had too many questions. Whenever I have too many questions.
I want to ask a question.
Yes.
How can I ask a question?
Yeah,
hold on.
One second.
Hold on, let me cut in for a second.
Wait, I'm going to give you 1 second. Just one second. So whenever I have questions, I don't understand. If I can get answers, I can do it. Okay. Somebody else was talking. Madame, vous finissez pour parler sur Fritz.
No. So, deuxième, pense ça c'est un statement. Parce que, là, moi, t'ai fait tant de Zoom, moi, t'ai pensé que c'est un bagage sur information, côté que, il t'a, like, bah, nous, information sur MNEFX, moi, t'ai pensé que, partie de leadership dans MNEFX là. So maintenant de tout ça ou dit yo, but ça dit yo gen un peu advice ou ba yo pas vraiment pratique. Parce que pour dire nous consacrer pour nous aller pour un avocat, pour nous faire un groupe, pour nous connaître qui ça pour nous faire, il pas pratique pour un peu monde non col là. Ouais, ça m'abdoula bien les fini tout ou pas faire partie des MNEFX. So pour moi même moi senti que ou plus mettre un esprit de paix. Ou comprendre moi non monde qui déjà mettait en pile l'argent investi dans MNEFX ou gen bagay que ou dit oui moi ka comprendre ça ouais ça m'abdoula bien mais moi bien sûr que gen l'autre résolution gen l'autre solution que ça ou dit au côté quoi mettre on paix dans tout monde que moi même moi pas vraiment apprécié ouais ça m'abdoula bien so moi même ça moi t'a voulu tendre moi même c'est un monde qui sorti dans leadership qui sorti dans camp Eddy, hein, ou comprendre moi côté parce que nous ka li, nous ka goûter internet pour nous entendre ça yo dit, mais nous voulons connaître qui vraiment plan parce que pour moi même c'est comme si on parler contre Emini contre nous-mêmes qui investissons, que m'a senti que ou vraiment là pour comme si que pour soulager nous ou est-ce m'a dit mais plus
excusez-moi le finir dit on bagarre là qui tellement intéressé me dit que il a commencé à 98 monde et puis lui même il vient appuyer le gouvernement que dit que il dit pas de bon côté que c'est un coup Jean édité compte pour le payer Pierre. So dire là pas d'accord ensemble avec pour ça dire c'est bon.
Hey.
Can we speak English, please?
I want my turn. Can I get my turn, please?
Okay,
I want my turn. Listen.
Speak English.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
To follow up on what you are doing, Fritz. Thank you. My question is, Professor, are you aware that if Eddy Alexandre is found guilty, there is a forfeiture order that would also cause every MiniFX member to lose their money? That's inside of the indictment, sir. So when you are against Eddy, you are actually helping the government to take the people's money. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Exactly.
Guys,
the forfeiture, sir. Please wait. Guys,
I agree with you.
Quiet, guys. Hold on.
Let's talk.
Hold on, guys. Guys, hold on. The forfeiture is the last part of the indictment, and the prosecutor included the MiniFX money in the forfeiture.
Right.
You know that?
Can I respond? Let me respond. I'm going to do it in English and then in Creole. First of all, guys, let me just make it clear.
C'est pour nous demander, professeur, où sont dit en parole tout à l'heure, que yo pas même fait investigation, yo arrêté. OK. Faut déjà ouais tout, son bagay préjudice, because non seulement il y a 2 félonies. Félonie que le fait, il gagne, li black, li haïtien 2. Parce que yo arrêté sans investigation. C'est pour yo te faire investigation en bas. Bon raciste. Ou sont noirs, ou sont haïtiens. Comprendre ça tout. Ou sont noirs. Parce que yo arrêté de pour black. Même sous haïtien, t'es jamaïcain, t'es toute nation ou fait avec un félonie de pour sauter dans maman. Li gen 2 félonies. Li black, li haïtien. Yo arrêté le comme ça. Mes amis, comme mon vieux. Mon vieux, moi respecter ou c'est réellement ou son avocat que me respecte.
Wait.
You're none of you can't even conduct a meeting.
We're not going to do it.
He is going to court and testify against Eddy Alexandre. None of you is going to make any statement.
Eddy doing a good thing.
We was doing a good thing.
I agree. Listen, I agree with you. No one has said he was doing a bad thing. That's never been said here. I've never said he was doing a bad thing. All I have said is Eddy obviously had good intention. But just because you have a good intention, that doesn't mean that you cannot make mistakes. That's all I said.
No, he just a crasé nous.
Listen, but monsieur Goroubaga bien. Tenez bien ça m'a dit. Changer qui j'en a commencé mes amis. Parce que c'est haïtien bien tout. Non ça y dit a passé à me dépasser la donne. Changer qui j'en a commencé, on changer. Quand a commencé, c'est là il dit aller c'est pour cobli dans Bank of America. Bank of America pas d'accord pour qu'on va sortir comme ça parce que yo même yo besoin de la pour faire investissement pas yo.
Qualified to provide legal advice and legal opinion right now.
Brother, I'm not providing.
Okay, this is my question. I am a member of MiniFX. I invest my money. I'm not going to tell you how much money I invest. But the question is, I don't think, because you mentioned when MiniFX started, they had probably like 89 members. And I wasn't part of it when they had 89 members. But when the club increased to so many people, because I joined MiniFX a couple months before the government took over. Now, my question is, if none of those members, they never report MiniFX, They never had a bad review about MNEFX. And now the guy's in trouble, even though when he's in trouble right now, none of the members, okay, they never say anything bad about Eddy. So I'm trying to understand. So why all of that? Why this guy is in that position? Because there are some other companies over there, like they have people invest money. And if you go check for the reviews, stuff like that, you see even their own members, they're saying bad stuff. And the CEO, they don't have any issue. So I'm trying to understand what happened to MNEFX, what happened to Eddy. I'm trying to understand what behind that. Please, can you explain?
Yeah, well, guys, I think that's a very, very good question. Like I have said before, I have followed the rise of MNEFX from the time the company was registered. And I can tell you, and this is not bad mouthing Eddy, I can tell you that there were a lot of mistakes made that allow what happened to happen. Okay, having said that, here's what I've said to people, okay? And I could say that because I have served as a civil rights attorney, I have dealt with a lot of racism. When a Black person is in a position like Eddy was, you are guilty until you prove innocent. In other words, you have to prove you're not doing anything wrong. The government, the system doesn't give you the benefit of the doubt. Now, remember how this whole thing started. It started with Bank of America. Bank of America was the one who reported it to the FBI. So also to the FTC. Now, why did this happen? I can give you a number of reasons. First of all, if I was a member of MNEFX, if I was part of the executive staff, I would have never have money deposited in a bank account, not in a goddamn million years. That would have never happened. I would have created a brokerage account where the money will be deposited. I wouldn't put it in the bank because you're creating more problem. Once the money's in the bank doesn't want to let it go. So that's one thing. The other thing is I would have hired a big law firm to make sure that everything that I'm doing is legal. Because here's what happened, guys. We're not allowed to make mistakes. We're not allowed to make mistakes, especially if you're Black, you're from Haiti. You're not allowed to make mistakes. Your mistake is a crime. Somebody else's mistake is just a mistake. So you're talking about other companies? Yes, there's other companies out there that are doing the same thing. But remember that everything is being done under the name of the company. And if the government has a problem, they're going to go after the company. For example, let me give you a very clear example, right? Why would Eddy Alexandre take any money under his name, under his own account? Nobody would do that. I would not have investors put their money in my personal bank account. No, that's just too much liability. Now, was he trying to steal the money? No, it was a mistake. That was what it was. It was just a mistake.
Would you please scroll back to what I just said?
It's just a mistake. So people make mistakes. And what I'm saying that we don't need to have the same thing happen over again. That's the reason why this is so important to talk about. It's about, again, it's about preventing the mistake from happening. That's all this is about.
That's okay.
Not using the bank. And I understand the reason why he was using the bank. Because he knows in our community, people, they don't really know that much about technology. He was using the bank, okay, yes, to help those people. That's the reason why he did it. Okay. And then I can tell you frankly, Eddy, he did not have the intention to do anything with the people, because I joined MNEFX. When I joined them, I tried to withdraw $100 just to test the system. I received my money real quick, so fast. And then other people as well, they withdraw money. Okay, they have withdrawn the money. They got the money. They had no issue at all. So the problem is, I don't think the fact that he was using the bank, it was a mistake for Eddy. No, he was trying to help people in our community because he knows us very well. That was the reason. So I'm still trying to, I'm looking, because I want that to get to the end. Because for me, I think Eddy, he did not have anything wrong in his mind. But as far as the government, they have to do what they have to do. We're just waiting. And that's it, I'm done.
No, I think, listen, I agree with you. I have agreed with you because let me explain something to you. This was, and I can tell you, I'm going to give you an opinion that I think is a very informed opinion. When Eddy started investing, there were family members and friends that started for investment group of 12 people. It goes up to 89 people. Then he realizes, hey, I could actually do this bigger because we're making money. I could help the community. And Eddy Alexandre decided that he was going to have mini effects. So he never, I've never met one person who said Eddy Alexandre did anything wrong, Eddy Alexandre lied to them. Not one person, not even my own uncle. When I spoke to him, he said, look, what the man said he was going to do, he did it. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Eddy Alexandre did anything wrong. However, what I will tell you, as someone with experience, I will tell you that there were some mistakes made. And whether Eddy Alexandre was trying to help people, because believe me, I have helped a lot of people when I practice law, it turned out to be bad for me. Because sometimes when you try to hurt people, when you try to help people, you put yourself at a disadvantage. And I agree with you. So the best thing we can do, guys, the best thing we can do is to continue supporting Eddy as we are doing. As we're supporting Eddy, we have to be also smart because the government is not going to help you. The job is not to help you. That's the reason I said that the investors and community, you can talk to Eddy, but the investors and together with Eddy's attorney, you guys could get a lawyer who would work with Eddy's attorney to make sure that not only Eddy's right is being protected, but your right as an investor is being protected. That's all I'm saying. And as a reporter, as someone who's reporting in the case, I'm simply telling you what I think you should do, which doesn't have anything to do with necessarily saying Eddy Alexandre is guilty, is innocent. And I agree with what you said. I don't think the man had any intention. That's my feeling. My feeling is that I don't think Eddy intended to do any wrong. Now, just because he had no intention, that does not mean that he could not have break the law. Because sometimes you break the law not even knowing you break the law. Why do we need an attorney when we're going to do something, for example? Why do we need an attorney to help us put it together? On both sides, it's because we don't want to make mistakes. Because once you make a mistake, the law is not going to say, oh, I think he made a mistake, it's okay. They're going to stick it to you. And I think that that's one thing, that's what's happening to Eddy. But you also have to realize that Eddy has done something with a community that nobody has been able to do. And I think Eddy was also a threat to the system. So if you're a threat to the system is going to take you out. And there is part of that in Eddy's case, that the big bank don't want him, and the government find a way to take him out, because obviously, if they're saying that he did something, whether it was a mistake or not a mistake, the government doesn't care, okay? So, next question. Leo.
Oui. Question non, c'est genre technique. Ouais, excusez-moi parce que je ne sais pas terminer bien. Donc, comme on est dans la profession, je ne sais jamais. Je ne sais pas qui va dans la place. Est-ce que c'est possible que il y ait deux cas, ça compte mini effect là avec un compte Eddy. Est-ce que c'est possible que en fait par un miracle ou bien par connaître la prière que yo bail cas mini effect là vague en faveur de cas Eddy. Et laisse arriver qui espoir nous-mêmes en tant que membres. Et puis deuxièmement, on se parle de causer receivership là, qui possible que quelqu'un qui en bas et qu'il a touché dans le bio, etc. Est-ce qu'on peut évaluer comme ça combien de monde gagne parce que vous avez un document, etc. sur bagage ça? Est-ce qu'on peut évaluer combien de monde ou bien combien au moins perdu au cahier parce que
OK, deuxième question avant. Et une lettre que recevez avoué par juge, il dit qu'il était besoin d'embaucher 5 personnes. 5 personnes, ça a eu forensic accountant, investigateur, et puis gagner un secrétaire, tout le monde qui peut travailler avec receiver. tout le monde ça a touché, mais d'habitude, on recevait un nombre de cob que mon a touché par heure, parce que un système, vous voyez juste demander n'importe quel argent. Un système, par exemple, combien cob vous a touché. Par exemple, avocat nous a touché entre 300 et 500 dollars par heure, ça dépend de combien d'avocats il y a. Investigateur nous a touché 150 dollars par heure, 100 dollars, ça dépend de combien d'années d'expérience il y a. Secrétaire là, un nombre de cob qu'il a touché par heure qui pas plus que 35 dollars. So, ça dépend. Mais les monsieur les autres doit aller mon yo là il va demander juge il va mettre ton papier ou lettre devant je dire mais combien moun marié mais combien qu'on a pour juge approuver comme ça a sorti dans comme que le recevoir pour recevoir mais tout bagage ça c'est bagage public et pas grand même la privé c'est-à-dire que tout bagage ça nous capable les que monsieur fait ça m'a fait vidéo pour mettre document ça dehors pour nous même pour nous pas garder documents pour nous qui gens recevoir à passer comme là vous comprenez. Ça, c'est réponse à première question, avec deuxième question. Première question, tu posée à l'échappée, mais est-ce que pas poser une bien rapide encore, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, je me dis, est-ce que par hasard, il y a une possibilité pour, tant qu'il y a un cas qui continue à faire l'enquête tomber, et laisse arriver qui possibilité qui est.
Non, quand contre les mini-FX là, monsieur qui j'en lis. C'est un cas que FCC mettait juste pour le cas prendre take over pour accompagner mini-FX. Juge en guettant entré un order qui dit que FTC guettant gagne position et mini-FX, banque à 48 tout bagage ça. Ça dit que éventuellement, parce que c'est comme ça système, non, il ne pas qu'à faire receivership là sans qu'on pas gagner un cas devant le juge. C'est pour ça FTC mène un cas devant le juge. Mais, sauf ça, FTC a besoin de faire le faire. FTC prend et mini-FX, il prend toute banque à 40 et mini-FX, c'est-à-dire que légalement, par contre, mon mini-FX, il a fait rien avec les mini-FX encore. Parce que, comme je t'ai dit déjà, et je voulais pour nous comprendre ça que je dit, même si Eddy Alexandre, il était joué pas coupable, joué innocent, et mini-FX, il n'y a pas de retourner. Et monsieur est certain que le gouvernement va faire façon quand même pour Eddy Alexandre pas jamais faire investissement, j'en ai fait encore. Parce que c'est comme ça a toujours passé. Eddy Alexandre est capable d'investir comme balle personnellement. Mais il n'est pas capable de prendre l'autre monde, par exemple, l'autre monde pour l'investir pour eux. C'est raison ça que fait FTC venir avec ça parce qu'il a besoin d'assurer que même si Eddy Alexandre est un criminel là, cas civil là lui-même, qui c'est deux cas différents, il va le conseiller des mesures pour faire vraiment impossible pour ni Emini FX retourner, pour ni Eddy Alexandre investir comme monde. Comme parle capable, comme monde. OK? Vous souhaitez me répondre à une question, non?
Oui, oui, merci beaucoup. Il y a un petit Jean flou, même plus ou moins là.
Next Galaxy, A42 5E.
Yeah. Galaxy A42. Vous me parlez, mon frère. Allô?
Oh, non, merci. Moi, parler déjà. Merci.
Mais vous attendez?
Oui, m'attendez. Hein?
OK. M'attendez tout débat. Je ne parle pas en créole moi-même.
Oui.
Je m'attendez tout débat au professeur. Donc, et m'attendez des questions posées. M'attendez des gens répondre. Alors, ça m'a conseillé. Et tant pis, je vous dis, depuis avant, je vais dérouler comme ça, je suis dans prédit déjà. Et si je suis qui investi, je fait grand pile qui pose des questions personnelles, qui attaque personnelle. Pas quoi c'est but bagay là ça. Donc tout bagay ou Dieu qui a vérifié.
Oui.
Et c'est un bagay ou inventé. Et même si on pas ta si tout le monde a gagné comme investir, si al chita avec un financial advisor non banque là dit tout bagay que ouais qui pas marché tellement droit là-dedans. Tu vas vous entendre parole. L'aspect légal là tout ça et c'est information et publique capable chercher peut-être pas. Il va besoin quoi ou pas quoi. Mais ça qui est important penser que ou dit me penser investir ta fait haïtien. Oubliez. Comme qui investit si tout bon gouvernement protégé gouvernement a supposé utiliser taxpayers' money pour conduct investigation, mais pas dans le taxpayer pour qu'il y ait un maximum possible. Et puisque son cas public lié, si vous gagnez un avocat, vous faites brut. Donc, les questions d'investissement, tout le monde doit défendre l'intérêt personnel. Et sans pas quoi, ni gouvernement, ni institution d'investir, parce que si ce n'est pas ça, il y a tout pas grillé. Parce que le gouvernement est capable d'employer top lawyer, and which is legally done. Et les gens déplient toute majorité dans le corps qui était là. Et puis, si reste qui était coulé là, c'est eux-mêmes, l'autre monde qui investit à pas gagner. Mais si vous êtes proactif, il y a un avocat qui a fait bruit pour vous tout, so le gouvernement coulé là, au lieu de capable dépléter comme investisseur, puisqu'il y a des fonds intérêts investisseurs as taxpayers' money, they should use taxpayers' money pour conduire l'investigation. On ça a gagné plus comme qui était pour les gens qui investissent capable de joindre. Maintenant, si il y aurait été, donc c'est attaque personnelle, il va pas défendre l'intérêt, so le gouvernement a prêté là, la paix fait affaire, et plus il dirait tout, c'est plus comme cap sorti dans comme on investit, c'est moins que il va gagner. Donc ça m'a souhaité que m'pas dit moun quoi ça ou dit mais en pile baka ou dit fait sens dans point finance, dans point légal. Donc étant on quoi li gen aspect pour les haïtiens. Maintenant si on pas quoi ça, yo ka checker yo même avec un avocat qui est spécifié dans investment. Donc on ça ka ouais plus clair et qu'on ça ka gen plus comme yo joindre si toutes les fois et yo ka joindre. Mais gon l'autre question m'ta me poser ou te dit les gouvernements commencent l'investigation, ils commencent son côté mais pas fini là. Tu tout sous gag order qu'elle te mettait à pour avocat ou pas partager information.
Ou là, nous avons perdu Galaxy. Et bon, pendant que bon, je souhaite retourner parce qu'on va parler pas important. Puis là, on m'a additionné rapidement pour une captain de. Et moi,
participation là-dedans.
Ah bon, ok, je ne vais pas attendre. Allez, continuez.
Vous entendez clair?
Vous entendez clair, oui.
Oui, moi, est-ce que vous pensez, en pile d'investigation a commencé, par exemple, nous sommes le cas Rupert Murdoch. Il a été arrêté monsieur seulement. Et l'investigation poursuit, il a arrêté avocat, il a arrêté financial de CFO, advisor, il a arrêté deux petites lits, au point que comme suicide, son seul monde qui va t'arrêter, c'est madame musulman. Donc maintenant, est-ce qu'il y a une possibilité tout que l'autre monde qui te font là-dedans, ou bien employé, ou bien monde qui t'a fait recruitment, je pense que l'advice légal, ça a été bon et pour monde, pour proactif. Ce n'est pas l'air à marcher sur eux pour y parer, mais depuis qu'il y a là, pour chaque monde qui a un pied là-dedans, pour y avoir intérêt, donc sans pas, comme on dit legally, when you're accused of a crime, you're just an accuser. You're not guilty until a jury or the judge pronounce you guilty. That's a process. Donc, ou même qui investit l'argent, I think, in this aspect, chaque monde qui a comme investir là, c'est un petit peu selfish, puis il y a intérêt par eux. Là-dedans, puis est-ce qu'il y a bien tout le corps, et surtout, il y a un gros corps là-dedans, il y a sorti plus crier, parce que, il y a la si complètement receiver, the receiver a défendu propre intérêt legally. So, li bon, pour moun sa yo, ta commencé ça pour faire bruit tout, pour yo, au lieu que vous ta deplete more money, pour you to use taxpayers' money to conduct investigation, since the government is saying they are defending taxpayers, the investors.
Mon cher, ou bien parler, ou tellement bien parler, je ne vais pas ajouter, ça seulement que je ne vais pas dire. Moi, qu'on est en pile monde qui remet Emini FX, qu'on est Emini FX, ça fait un bon bagage. Et moi, je vais essayer, tout le monde connaît que c'est bon bagage contre Emini FX. L'on a gourmet, pour les armes pour gourmet. Ou pas qu'à un gourmet pour dire, bon, gourmet, on commence, on va commencer. Eddy Alexandre, des problèmes parle. La dit avec problème parle. Nous-mêmes, nous qui d'accord, qui supportent Eddy, on continue à supporter Eddy. Mais pendant ce temps, tout, pendant qu'on supporte Eddy en tout, parce que ce n'est pas Eddy qui va décider combien il a retourné par chaque monde. C'est le receveur qui va décider. C'est pour ça que moi-même, moi, je dis, répéter ça, moi, je dis que si quelqu'un n'a pas investi capital de là, qui investit en pile l'argent, pas grand chose qui investisseur du coup ça passe, nous besoin d'avocat pour représenter l'investisseur. Donc pas faire ça si vous voulez. Mais faut moun yo qui peut-être Fred, faut pas penser que on va quand Eddy Alexandre ou bien et le fait que n'a parlé de ça et nous pas supposé parler de ça, nous pas intérêt dans ça, faut moun yo suspendre faire ça parce que c'est pas ça, c'est pas comme ça que nous apprendre. L'on va passer dans la communauté hein. Faut nous parler de lui, bien ou mal, nous parler de lui parce qu'il y a l'autre monde qui apprend de ça qui passe. Et c'est raison ça qui fait que les gardons une communauté en entier qui investit 59, 100 millions de dollars. Et bien, ça va être quoi qui se dit dans la communauté. Alors, on va besoin de poche moins, on connaît son corps qui se dit dans la communauté. Comme on n'a pas de amis, on n'a pas de frères, on n'a pas tout le monde, c'est comme communauté qui est liée. Le fait que Eddy t'a essayé, font des choses positives, j'apprécie ça. Mais ça ne veut pas dire que nous ne pouvons pas apprendre. C'est ça qui est important. OK? Mon cher, merci un peu les Galaxy pour l'intervention. Très, très bien fait. Merci un peu. Et next question.
You've been asked to summarize this.
Okay. Let me just summarize it very quickly. Galaxy was saying that the people, basically the people do not need to necessarily believe what I'm saying. They can protect it for themselves. But the fact that I brought out the information, it's good for people to know. It's not that they're going to go against Eddy, but they have to protect their own interests as investors. So if you're an investor, you have money invested, you're never going to say Eddy Alexandre did anything wrong. You're simply going to say, hey, I'm an investor. If there's something happening with the investment, I need to know about it. That's it. And he also said that he believed that what we talk about in terms of the investors having some kind of representation is a good thing, because instead of using the investors' money to conduct whatever investigation the government is conducting, they should use taxpayers' money. But those arguments can be made by a person who represents the investor. Right now, there are only basically two lawyers. There's the government lawyer and Eddy's lawyer, which is the criminal defense lawyer. The receivership works with FTC, and FTC have their own lawyers. But the investors are nowhere to be found. They don't have any representation. They don't know what's going on. They're not part of the proceeding. But if you return a lawyer, the lawyer can say, hey, judge, I represent all the investors. Let's see what's going on here. Let's see what's happening. He's not going to go against Eddy. He's not going to say anything about Eddy. I don't want people to think that's what this is about. And this is not to scare people. Okay, some of my brothers and sisters believe that if there is information or something they don't agree with, all of a sudden they have to be afraid. This has nothing to do with being afraid. This has to do with you getting that information so you can be smarter. The other thing that the brother mentioned, which I'm going to say in English, he talked about a prior case where first they arrested the person in charge, and then they follow up and arrest a whole bunch of people. Could this happen in this case? Yes, because the government is still investigating this case. This case is not near finished with investigation. I have said time and time again, people who were very close to Eddy were involved in recruiting people. It would be a good idea for them to consult an attorney to keep their mouth shut, to not say anything. So please listen, based on my experience, when you say something, you cannot take it back. Silence sometimes is golden, because they can't say you say something you didn't say. If you said something, you can't change it. So, I think this case is teaching the community something to make sure that they're not engaged in those type of things. We cross all the T's, we dot all the I's. We don't make any mistake. We don't do things because somebody is our friend. We make sure we get all that information, because entre nous-mêmes, si son bail qui était passé entre Haïtiens, et dit pas de problème ça. But we're not making the decision. Other people are making the decision. So part of bringing that information to people out there is not to malign Mr. Alexandre's name. I have heard of Mr. Alexandre for a very long time, and I could tell you, I've spoken to a lot of people. I have not met one person who said anything bad about the man. So obviously that is a testament to his personality, to the kind of person he is. But guys, one other thing we have to remember, Jesus was a perfect human being and they crucified him. So what's happening to Eddy Alexandre, maybe there's some prophecy to it, I don't know. I'm not a religious person, but I'm talking to a lot of people in the Adventist faith who believe that, and I respect their belief. But this is not to speak bad about Eddy Alexandre at all. If anything, before I start talking about Eddy Alexandre, I was in Tele-Image, and I said this for all of you, that I have been through this, and I know from first-hand experience what Eddy Alexandre is going through in his mind, what his wife is going through, his kids, all of his family. This is a very terrible time for them. It's a terrible time for them. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Okay? I wouldn't wish it because you don't want that. I wouldn't wish that. But let's acknowledge that what happened, let's learn from that, okay? When we talk, we're not talking, oh yeah, Eddy Alexandre is a bad person. That's not what we're talking about. And I've never said that. All I have said is, if somebody was going to do the same thing that Eddy Alexandre did, then maybe we ought to look at what happened, what mistake, if any, was made, so that we don't repeat that mistake. Information is gold. Information is gold. So I want all of us guys to take information without maligning each other, because that's not my intention at all. So Nula, thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback. And I will make sure that I do cover other things in the community. And of course, if you have anything in the community that you think is worth covering, let me know. I would cover it. So thank you so much, Nula. I appreciate your feedback. Thanks again.
Last question from Jean.
Yes, Jean, go ahead.
Oui, bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
OK. Moi-même, je parle en créole.
Vous me parlez créole, nous te parlons créole.
D'accord. OK. C'est parce que c'est sous question te dit mini FX li over. C'est ma continue avec ça, mon qui avant te dire que ou t'es sûr qu'on dit mini FX li over. Moi comprendre c'est de past expérience qu'on parle. Mais cas ça sont cas qui vraiment différents de tout l'autre cas que nous habitués. Ouais. Moi j'ai un bagage qui trouble qui bon problème en pile. C'est parce que yo arrêté si yo. Ça veut dire qu'on sait que yo pas qu'on fait investigation. Ça veut dire pour qu'à faire n'importe menti ou qu'à dissolver juste pour capable prendre mon nom and bring mini FX down. C'est ça moi senti comme membre. Ça veut dire qu'on sait deux pour dire parole on probable cause ou font bagaille et pour on y prendre et pour craser. Pas dire moi aider pendant que ou font bagaille comme ça. Comment on aider non là, on pas aider du tout parce que ou juste dire on va un bagaille monter et puis même quand on mettre receivership. Si je un bagage moi me reprocher ou c'est un monde qui pousse plus mon dans receivership là parce que moi tando dans YouTube ou c'est un monde qui pousse plus mon dans receivership qui vient faire receivership là lui même dans là tu es capable de joindre moyen pour gagner jusqu'à 8000 monde. OK, ça on nous passer sur ça. Mais pour me tourner sur affaire CFTC pas grand dit Mr. Alexandre pas gagné licence. Premier bagage qui gagne crypto pas régulé. Quand on rejoint comme si m'avait de l'ampion on juste dit pas gagne licence. CFTC pas rien à voir avec crypto. Parce que pas gagne la régulation pour crypto. Donc ça veut dire qu'on pas quel bagage qui pas quel question mark. Pas parce que ont besoin pour yo satisfaire Banque America qui 14 700 000 $ pas de bail et puis qu'on y a là on cherche un gens pour caser business. Moi même c'est comme ça me sentir. Et jusqu'à ce que ça li over, m'a toujours senti le concours comme ça, son coup yo fait nous parce que d'après ce qu'on dit nous on dit comme ça que Eminem ça tourner encore. Ça veut dire que yo on dit on bagage sur le monde même là que après il not guilty Eminem ça tourner comment ça?
Bon,
dans ça.
Opposons très belle question. Bon, m'explique pour qui raison. Très très belle question. Bon, m'explique pour qui raison. Et d'habitude beaucoup de gens m'ont côté FTC al dans côte. Il dit que compagnie, on va parler de nous, on va parler de compagnie en lui-même. Compagnie pas une compagnie normale ou bien compagnie font bagaille qui pas correct à la loi. Pour compagnie ça a tourné, ça va jamais fait. Et il y a une compagnie que y a dans côte avec yo, compagnie paye on fine et puis compagnie continue. Mais Emini FX pas genre de compagnie ça yo. Emini FX son compagnie qui commencer avec CEO qui par exemple que Eddy Alexandre d'après ça m'apprend il a essayé de le compagnie t'a mené monde t'a embauché monde pour faire compagnie en marché comme on doit marcher. monsieur pas de guet en fait ça, parce que le gouvernement, comme on dit, interféré sans que vous ne faire investigation. Moi, comprendre ça, dit, hein, oui, et moi, participer, moi, partager opinion, ça, dit, là, je partager opinion, ça. Pendant que je partage opinion, ça, tout, regarder tout, qui ça, le gouvernement doit pour le faire. Et l'aime garder ça Emini FX fait, qui j'ai Emini FX set up, on sait de bagailles, moi, dit, ah, c'est faute ça, qui fait le gouvernement qui a fait ça. Vous comprenez? Mais pendant ce temps, nous-mêmes qui investissons dans Mini FX, nous toujours disons ça. Nous ne pouvons pas dire toute conclusion, nous ne pouvons pas dire Eddy fait un mal. Jusqu'à présent, nous avons dit Eddy fait un mal. Mais on nous garde comment ça a développé, on nous garde qui le gouvernement a investigué ça. Et puis nous-mêmes, les informations ça a venu, mettre les informations, il y a des spécifications. Par exemple, je te dis que.
Ok, pour moi-même.
Wait, let me just say it in English for the other people who don't speak. Whose Creole is not.
Okay, go ahead.
Not good. One of the things that the young lady was saying was that I have made a statement saying that Emini FX will never come back. And the reason I made the statement, and I've explained that in cases where the FTC sue a company, normally if it's a big company and the company pays a fine, sometimes the company can survive. But Emini FX was not that type of a company. Emini FX was a company that was legally registered in New York, was actually in the process of developing the staff, of developing the business. In fact, Eddy Alexandre recently rented an office in Manhattan. So he was in the process of making this the company he should be. And he never had the opportunity to do that because the government interfered with it. Now, because of that, if FTC is going to make sure that maybe another company might come back. I mean, they may, and let me be very careful, because I don't want Nola to be upset with me. Nola, FTC they may take a step to make sure that Emini FX does not come back. Now, that may not come back. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody else may not come from somewhere and say, you know what, I want to open another company, I want to continue, or they may want to change the name. Okay, but the name Emini FX, which is actually a good name, that name would no longer be available because here's the reason. Whenever you talk about Emini FX, everybody's going to associate it with something bad. And if you Google the name of Emini FX, all that comes up with all that bad information. So why would you want the name of a company like that?
Excusez-moi. Actuellement, c'est pour ça, même pour le retourner. Parce que si on fait une erreur, c'est pour accepter qu'on fait une erreur, et puis c'est comme ça pour corriger l'erreur. C'est que faut le gouvernement comprendre que you're pas always right. Sometimes you fait erreur et faut accepter erreur and then et puis correction puis on fait là c'est pas craser parce que sous craser li ou pas corriger li. Ou supposé quitter le retourner même pour montrer que ou a font travail qui serait la justice. Pour moi même c'est ça que la justice parce que oh oui, m'te pensé pas de licence, m'te pensé tel bagage but I was wrong. No, I'm going to make it right. C'est ça, moi-même, penser que yo t'a supposé faire. Yo pas qu'à juste décider. Sinon, n'importe qui qui peut écraser un business, ou on juste d'un bagage de mon nom, et puis même côté en tout monde là, yo mette receivership et puis on écraser business ou.
Mais bon, monsieur Gobier.
That is not right.
Madame Jean, bon, monsieur Gobier dans le pays ici. Bon, monsieur Gobier, t'as dit ça me parle ici. Système n'a fait un gens pour ne pas quitter un série de monde dans le challenge. Je vais bon exemple. Très bien. Docteur Jean-Baptiste, qui sont haïtiens, que tout le monde dans le congrès connaît, monsieur, que tout le monde connaît le travail dans la communauté. Regardez ça, vous faites, monsieur. Vous arrêtez, monsieur, dit que monsieur t'a violé la loi. Vous faites des gars fait 5 ans à Bouma avec eux. Après 5 ans, vous dites, oh, well, you know what, nous avons une évidence pour mettre le aller. Pendant ce temps, nous regardons de tous côtés. Mais il y a des problèmes, des dépenses plus propres à l'avocat. So, c'est pas un système qui fait. Moi, je senti que gagner en pile dans bagaille qui t'est passé, docteur Jean-Baptiste, qui pas passé Eddy Alexandre tout. Parce que faut nous garder qui Jean-Baptiste développer. Au moins, il faut nous garder qui Jean-Baptiste développer. Il faut comprendre le système, il faut comprendre la politique. Je ne peux pas dire que Eddy Alexandre, c'est parce que les Haïtiens, les Noirs, les Noirs, c'est tout comme ça. Il y a un aspect là-dedans. Parce que je toujours dit que changeons bagaille bien, pas jamais oublier côté de sortie, pas jamais oublier qui coulait nous, pas jamais oublier qui langue nous parler, pas jamais oublier qui nous nouiller. Parce qu'on a dit dans le système, pour que le système n'a pas travaillé, pas gagné 100 000 haïtiens millionnaires. Quand vous dit Alexandre Détourné, c'est tout le millionnaire qui me dit pas le taxi. Donc, je comprends tout le bagage ça. Et ça rentre dans les enjeux tout. Mais nous-mêmes, we have to be very careful. Pour nous apprendre que les problèmes sont passés, pour nous apprendre de eux. C'est raison que ça fait qui fait que Chanel ça là, c'est pour pas information, dire mais ça va passer, qu'on nous pas discuter. Par exemple, l'équipe belle tout haïtien chita n'a pas ensemble, nous respecter l'un à l'autre, nous échanger information et puis nous apprendre de l'un à l'autre. Pendant m'a fait réunion ça là, m'a prendre pile bagage, m'a pile monde qui me feedback qui fait que ma vie mieux que jamais parce que des monde qui a regardé qui dit mon cher ça me donne aimé. Vous comprenez? So, je pense que nous we have to move forward, continue to listen to the channel. I will bring more information as the information becomes available. Unfortunately, oui.
Une dernière question, oui. Ou pas bon nous aucune information de dernier bagay qui fait en le 8 là. Parce que il y a l'autre information qui en plus, dans un mot qui ça le dit. Parce que moi, je pense que le gouvernement Kounia là, il n'a pas de discovery encore. Ou peut-être qu'il monter information en plus de ça, oui. Parce que il y a un order que on va le faire pour discovery.
Bon, et bien, monsieur Ko, auparavant, pour mon capitaine, le gouvernement a demandé des juges pour lui et mettre un gag order. Ça veut dire que l'avocat Alexandre a demandé pour bailler évidence que vous avez papier, bagay comme ça. Quand il dit Alexandre. Le gouvernement était prêt pour le débat, mais le gouvernement n'a pas voulu pour information que le bail avocat a dit, ou bien information que Eddy a bien accès à elle, pour Eddy à partager avec l'autre monde qui doit sujet.
Son bagage public lié. Pas oublier, c'est pas Eddy Alexandre seulement qui l'a.
Non. Non. Madame Jean, non.
Il a caché. Non, va supposer cacher pour le dire exactement pour qu'il soit arrêté.
Attendez. Évidence que le gouvernement dit qu'il gagne, n'est pas public. Beaucoup de gens n'ont aucune évidence publique. Le gouvernement dit qu'il gagne évidence, mais l'évidence n'est pas publique. D'habitude, le gouvernement gagne évidence ça ou dans le cas ça. Il a toujours essayé de protéger l'évidence. Je savais que je dis que quand on finit, le gouvernement continue à investiguer parce que l'autre monde qui a investigué. Il n'a pas voulu pour aider par information et que vous jouez sous le monde. Ça, c'est le premier bagage. Le 8, il dit que il ne peut pas discovery là parce que il y a une investigation toujours qui continue. Parce que vous-même, il pas voulu bailler une information et puis Kounia là pour avocat Eddy avec Eddy utiliser l'information ça pour défendre tête. Il y a tant pour plus d'informations.
Exemple, monsieur, vous pensez que c'est qu'on s'allie, moi pas pour même l'aime les papiers, c'est pas ça moi pense que les non parce que j'ai l'impression qu'il faut faire une recherche encore avant ou parler de ça. Parce que je pense qu'il y a plus que ça, d'après moi-même.
Non, attendez.
Parce que le gouvernement, c'est lui-même qui dit qu'il va camper pour ne pas bailler. OK. Côté bagay que le spiritual, il ne va pas camper. Spiritual, il gagne presque over 90 days. He has to go to trial. Le gouvernement n'a pas dit qu'on s'allie pour mettre on stay sous discovery. Non. Ça peut ne pas comprendre. Il y a 62 000 personnes qui involvent dans ça, ce n'est pas seulement Eddy. Et puis, oubliez ça. Ouais, haïtien, nous ne venons pas ici voler. Nous venons pas ici, nous venons apprendre dans l'école. Nous connaissons, nous aimons le livre. Nous avons information. Donc, le gouvernement n'a pas qu'à l'école pour jouer ensemble avec nous. They need to make it right. Parce que we are watching. Nous regardons, nous suivons. Et pas bien, nous causer. Nous allons nous zanana pour 6 ans. Pas que quelqu'un qui a nous la main là. Nous ne pouvons pas prendre la main là.
Oui, bon, c'est pour ça que fait. Madame Jean, c'est pour ça que il est important pour nous disséminer l'information que le gouvernement lui-même lui dit qu'il gagne ou bien parce qu'il faut nous tout connaître ce que le gouvernement a dit pour nous parler en cause, pour nous parler en cas de cause, pour nous parler en cas de ça. Nous comprenons ce que dit là. Le gouvernement a besoin de ce discovery parce que le gouvernement vraiment pas voulu by discovery là. Soit disant spiritual, ça existe dans la loi, mais d'habitude, depuis des avocats sont d'accord pour un postponement, pour faire l'autre lettre, ils ne sont pas d'accord. Vous comprenez? Des avocats.
Je ne pas parler de lui-même. Et si moi, je suis ensemble avec Eddy, je vais écrire immédiatement pour moi de spiritual. Il n'y a pas parlé, ça c'est business par eux. Avancez. Il n'y a pas parlé de business parce que je vais gagner la main.
Madame, let me tell you something. Listen, I totally agree with you because the government made an arrest. The government should have had the evidence before he made the arrest. So if Eddy said he wants to go to trial tomorrow, the government has to go to trial tomorrow. Eddy doesn't have to wait for the government to conduct his investigation and then go to trial while Eddy is at home, he cannot move. So absolutely agree with you, 100% agree with you. And I hope that his lawyer actually pushed the government to go to trial, because I can tell you right now, the government is not ready. Because remember, they arrested Eddy without, first of all, I don't think the government is ready, and I'll tell you why. They arrested Eddy, and when they arrested him, they didn't have an indictment. What they had is an information of an FBI agent say, well, here's what we think happened. Okay, that's what the affidavit kind of said. Then later on, they went ahead and get an indictment. So why couldn't they wait, 3 months, 6 months, investigate the case more? Why did they have to arrest him right now? So I agree with you. We'll find out. All right.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm almost.
L'argent qui est banque américaine, m'ta me côté l'argent ça y est kounya là parce que m'pa ta remel nan mais toujours parce que c'est
no, the receiver has everything. The receiver has all the money.
No. The receiver move it to another bank or somewhere else?
No. What happened is the court has a trust account. When they have a case like that, they created a trust, and it would call the Emini FX trust or whatever name they give it. All that money will go to the trust account. Will be under the control of the no, receivership. All right, guys, I have only one. I have 1 minute left. I've been going on for a very long time. One more question, 499. 499, are you there?
499, yeah, there we go.
499, go ahead.
Good night. I have a question I wanted to ask, because it was based on, I think, from the question that Jean asked a while ago. If he was to go to court and he loses the case, and we understand that negative aspect. What about if he wins this case?
Well, okay, go ahead.
In relation to Emini FX, what is stopping Emini FX from coming back into business as Emini FX if he wins this case? And what is stopping Emini FX from also going after the people who get us here in the first case?
Okay. First of all, that's a good question. And I do hope that he wins the case. Now, if he actually wins the case, that would be the case against him. He'll be found not guilty and be able to move on with his life. Now, with regard to Emini FX has a different case against it. And that case is brought by the FTC. The FTC has taken over Emini FX. So the legal entity is still with the state of New York. So if Eddy Alexandre, and I hope he is found not guilty, he's innocent, then the staff or the people, the investors would have to decide whether or not they want to continue with the name. And then they can go ahead and continue with the name. But I doubt that Eddy Alexandre would be in charge of it. Let me explain to you why. And this is based on experience. If the US government failed to convict Eddy, and I hope they do, they will continue to go after Eddy until Eddy leaves the country. That's how the US government operates. They'll find some tax issue, and I've seen it happen in other cases. It happened in other cases. And I'm not saying this is not just Eddy. It happened in a whole bunch of other cases. So they don't like to lose anything. So my view is that let's hope that Eddy wins this case, and then the investors will decide whether or not they want to continue with the name Emini FX. But if it was for me, I probably would just say no. But that's just my opinion, of course. All right, guys, it's 9 o'clock. Let's see, yeah, it's 9 o'clock, and I've been going for 2 hours. I have to go. I want to thank all of you for attending this meeting. I hope that you are receiving some information that you can use. Please do continue to watch the channel. I will continue to report on the important aspect of the